Hi, everyone. Yeah. Hope nobody was planning on speaking because I'm going to be sleeping. I'm planning on speaking because I'm going to be as loud as I possibly can, keep you all awake. My name is Jimmy Ewald. Like Kimberly said, I'm the president of the group. I don't really do a whole lot other than, well, I'm sort of responsible for everything that goes wrong. That's about it, though. But I appreciate everybody that's here. If you're not here, you're missing out on Chick-fil-A, which is here from one of our sponsors, Addison Group. If you're interested in hearing what services they have to offer, feel free to contact me and I can get you in touch with who you need to get in touch with. But thanks to them for the free Chick-fil-A, and you should have been here if you wanted Chick-fil-A. But thanks for joining us on Twitch if you are listening. So my title here is a little different than what we were advertising because we're actually going to do a little AWS. So hopefully that's all right with everybody. I'm getting a couple shakes. No one likes AWS. Darn it, Jimmy. Does everybody know what AWS is? Amazon Web Services. If you don't know, it's okay if you didn't. I mean, we'll all judge you silently, but it's okay if you didn't. They're really cool. It's virtual machines in the cloud. If you've heard in the cloud and you get excited, then you should be really excited by this because they're in the cloud. And like you might have noticed, or maybe you don't know anything about what's going on tonight, but that's okay. Everything that we're going to be showing today is free. So if you ever wanted to create a sandbox to play around with, maybe this is sort of, I guess, aimed at newer folks. Whenever I got started in SQL, this is one of the things that I did was I didn't know what SQL was. Like I didn't actually know what a select statement was. But I was doing a job for as a database administrator. Yeah, I was an intern. I didn't know what SQL Server was. He was there. He can verify. That's Bill. I guess one more quick thing before we get going. At the end of this, we're going to be talking a little bit about SQL Saturday. We're going to be deciding on what, I guess, presentations are going to be there. So stick around. And if you're on Twitch, then you should have been here to vote. Yeah. Yeah, get over here if you can. Just still Chick-fil-A. All right, so here's the about me. I sort of was already talking about it. A bunch of useless information. I work for Interworks, which is an awesome company. I've been doing this stuff since September 2014, which really, I guess, is coming up on 4 years. So wow, look at that. I'm more or less also doing this just to show, because we love lightning talks at this user group. So if you've ever thought like, I'm not the best presenter, or I don't know that much, like I'm sort of up here to show you like, boy, you could be pretty bad at this and you can still like get up here and do things. Yeah, like I'm the president of this group. What's up with that? So let's get started, I guess. SQL Server and AWS, that's the wrong direction. Stupid Jimmy. So here's a little rundown of what we're going to be doing. So we're going to first create an AWS account and a virtual machine using AWS for free. We're also going to download SQL Dev Edition, install SQL Server onto the virtual machine. We're going to download a database from the internet, restore it to SQL Server, and then we're going to query it. And then everybody here will be able to do that, hopefully, if I do an okay job. So let's just get started with AWS. By the way, I did sort of like a screenshot, click by click kind of thing, because I've heard about the horrors of like doing a live demo and stuff. So if it looks a little weird, it's because It's not that good. So enjoy. So first things first is we go to aws.amazon.com to create our free account. So one of the first things you'll notice, you got to create your account here and fill in all the good stuff, just like normal. You got to enter in your credit/debit card, and it's like, oh no, not this. They're going to start charging me without me knowing. And well, I mean, it's true. If you do mess up, then maybe they'll charge you. But if you're careful, you should be fine. Boy, that doesn't sound very reassuring, but you got to enter the credit card number if you want to do this. There is other ways, by the way. You don't always have to use Amazon. You can use Azure as well to do testing, as well as local, create a local sandbox, which we have gone over once before. We just used VirtualBox whenever we went over that. But just for today, we're doing AWS, so here we go. So you got to keep entering in the stuff. They call you. What's the number you see on the screen? And then you're in. So here, you get to choose your plan. So that's where you choose the free. And as long as you pick the free stuff, then you won't be charged. I promise. Yes, you can actually set up notifications as well on here. But yeah. If you didn't hear, she asked after 12 months, do you need to set up a reminder like so you don't get billed down the road? And I'm pretty sure as long as you're not, Bill, maybe you can tell me, as long as you're not like spinning up clusters and running them, you should be fine.
So, at least whenever I first started with this, the T1 and T2 micros with free had a limit of being free for 1 year. Now I will say I haven't noticed that 1 year limitation is still in place when you sign up and set up, but like they may have removed that 1 year limitation to see on small servers, but it's something to verify and not something that you wouldn't want to check.
Sorry? Oh, on one of the past ones? Oh, whoops, this way. Right.
There. So yes, in 12 months, make sure you turn everything off, or be willing to pay for it. I will say that I ran 3 hours of a medium server, and it cost me 19 cents that month. So the prices are still pretty cheap and affordable. It's just a matter of what you're willing to pay for.
So what Bill's saying is, if you go the smallest tier cluster, then it's still super cheap. But yeah, after 12 months, if you're still spinning up clusters, like keep an eye on it. And you can set up billing like alerts, like, oh, this is starting to cost money. If you get the smallest tiers, which are free right now anyway, they're insanely cheap for limited use. So it's not that bad, but.
I think you can also set up limits on how much they will charge you per month. Basically say, I don't want to be charged more than $1 this month. And if you do something bad and it spins up a whole bunch of stuff, as soon as you hit that limit,
Yep.
they may shut it down.
Yeah, so what was said was you can set up these spending limits to where if you only wanted to spend $1 at most in a month, then you spin up a crazy huge cluster, it'll kill itself before it costs more than $1, so you can set that up.
So one thing I was doing is work with Google's Firebase, and these questions are relevant anytime you do anything in the cloud. You're in different data. You can take a look at free tier, how long it's the last for, does something have passed, because those answers are different across different systems. So these questions are relevant regardless of whether it's AWS or Google Firebase or any other.
Yeah, so in other words, you can actually spend a lot of money spinning up clusters in the cloud. Like, oh, hey, I'm just going to press a few buttons, and then it costs you like thousands of dollars. So don't do that. Like, don't be scared. You know, you can still follow the step by step, and you'll be just fine. But on the other hand, don't be reckless. That's all we're trying to say. Bill. Sorry. Okay, so it's moving ahead. Once you've created everything, you can do the basic plan, which is free for 12 months. What? I don't know what you're saying. She's whispering at me. So let's sign in, and then we're going to use launch a virtual machine with EC2. Does anyone know what EC2 stands for? Just out of curiosity. That's like one of the one things I know. I'm going to lord it over the class. Elastic Cloud Compute. Now you're all smarter. That's it. Everyone's going home now. Okay, we're going to keep going. Okay, so that's it. So you got to create your virtual account. That's the first thing we're doing. Now you get to pick your AMI, Amazon Machine Image. That one's right up there for you, so you can fact check me right there. What we want to do is select free tier, because we're doing this for free. We're not spending a penny. And one thing that's kind of cool is you can choose a bunch of different virtual machines that have different OSs already pre-installed. So instead of having to install Windows Server, which you normally would have to do, or whatever it is you want to use, Server is already installed. So you don't have to download it or buy it if you wanted. It's just there, which is nice. And also, you can install SQL Server on Linux. So if you wanted to test it out, which I actually plan on doing, you just spin up one of these Linux boxes, and then you can test out installing SQL Server there. So that's kind of cool. So we're going to go down and use Microsoft Windows Server 2016 base, just because. There's a bunch of different versions on here, but we're going to do 2016. We're going to select it, and we're going to choose free tier eligible T2 Micro. As you can see, it's a really small box. It has one CPU and 1 gig of memory, which is not a lot, but it's free. So good for us. I'm just going to say again, I'm approaching this from like whenever I first started, this would have been good information for me. Or maybe, we have SQL Server 2000 still, and so we really want to see what 2016 is all about, but we have no hardware and I don't have a job. That doesn't make sense. What's up?
Just for further clarification for the free tier, if you end up going over 12 months and you forget, the T2 Micro, the one that you're able to actually choose here, costs 1.16 pennies per hour.
All right, so what Bill just said is if after your 12 months you left this spinning, it costs how much? 1.16 pennies per hour. A quarter a day or so. So it's super expensive and will run your bank account dry if you're not careful. Wrong direction. Okay, so we're choosing this instant type, and also you might notice we went from step 2 to step 7. You can do a bunch of fun, cool things in the middle, but we're just going to skip all that for right now. So what we're going to do is create a new key pair, and basically we're just making a password for getting into the server. So we're just securing the server a little bit. So we don't have a key pair, so we can create a new key pair. We're just going to name it test instance pair. Yeah, what's up?
One thing on cloud is make sure you don't put this kind of information in like a public place, like you get a public repository, because there was people that did that in the past. So it's something there's now access to, because this is about the internet. If they get this information, you can get access to it.
Sure, right. Yeah, so be careful with this stuff out here so that I myself personally don't get people maliciously attacking me, or if you put your stuff out there. So I'm pretty sure I've done enough to where people won't hack me, but don't take that as a challenge. Moving on, what we're doing is we're saving this this key pair, and we're going to just save it locally. So this is Firefox. There it is. It's saved. We're going to open it up, and there it is. That's the pass. No, it's not really. It's really not that, but it would be in there where those stars are. Believe me. You can try it yourself if you don't believe me. So what we're going to do is we're going to, now that we have a key pair, we're going to choose the key pair that we have, test instance pair, and we're going to acknowledge blah, 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 and we're going to move on. Oh, we're doing pretty good. We've almost got our virtual machine up. And now it's launching. Great, so we can view our instances. So moving on, there it is. And this is what the dashboard looks like. I just went ahead and named the instance, and then we're going to connect to it. Now you can do other things too that I'm not showing here, like you can make it so where the only person who can connect to the instance, the only inbound rule is coming from my IP address, so no one else's, but I didn't show how to do that. But you can do that, and other cool things. So now we're going to use get password, and this is where we use the key pair that we were just talking about. So what you can do is you can either copy and paste that little star thing from earlier in there, or you can just browse and pick your key pair, and then it'll give you a password. You just hit decrypt password, and then boom, it'll spit it out, and then you can copy and paste it. So now whenever you are using use the DNS, so what you'll use is remote desktop if you have a Windows machine, and then you use that password after then. So this, you can just click on download remote desktop file, and you can open it that way, and it'll bring you up to the, do you want to connect? This is where we're connecting to. We add in the password that we just saw, and then it's like, scary, scary, and we do it anyway. And then look at that, we start logging in. So yay, we did it. I haven't tried on anything else. I'm sure there's some way of doing it. Do you know the answer to that, Bill? There's got to be some way of getting in.
So it's a key I think the local IP address for it to give you using the password. So you don't have to technically download the remote desktop network. You can just connect it however you want.
So the question was is, if you don't have Windows, if you're using a Mac, how do you connect to the virtual machine? Well, it just gives you the public DNS. So if you're using a Mac, then you'd use whatever Mac has, I guess. But I have a Mac, but it's for work, and I don't really know, to be honest with you, so sorry. But yeah, right. You'd use the info to connect to it using whatever the application is that will connect you there. Okay, so part one done. Woo! That was pretty fast. Not too bad. So now we have a virtual machine for free in the cloud. So in the cloud, by the way, in case you're wondering, what does that exactly mean? It just means you can use the internet to connect to it, which is nice. So totally free, step one. Now step two, SQL Server Developer Edition. So you can just Google SQL Server Developer Edition, and then you're going to hit try SQL Server 2017. Now you can get 2016 as well. Just for this, I use 2017 because post 2016 on Developer Edition is totally free. You don't have to spend a dime. And Developer Edition is the exact same thing as Enterprise Edition. Enterprise Edition means it comes with everything, so all that good stuff. It's totally free from 2016 on. If you go 2014 or before, it's like $50, I think, for at least 2014 and 2012. And yes. Sure. Mm-hmm. What you want to know about SSIS, SSRS?
No, you might mention that developer edition, because some people use SQL fiddle to play around with queries.
Mm.
You get here, you get all the SQL servers.
Oh, yes, including SSIS, SSAS analysis. and SSRS, all those things. So if you want to play around with any of those things, you get it all with Developer Edition. It comes with all the good, fun stuff. So it's important to say. Sorry?
You don't need Visual Studio because we use their data tools that come free.
Mm-hmm.
Use that for playing as a side stack.
So, yeah, so when you use, so there's a few different versions if you don't know. There's a Standard Edition, Enterprise Edition. Enterprise comes with everything nice and cool. It's the most expensive. Standard is coming with more and more than it used to, but it's a lot less expensive, but it doesn't come with everything. It does have compression now and cool stuff, which is nice. And there's also Express. So Express is SQL's totally free, and you can use it for business. However, you don't get to use, like it's very, very limited. So if you have a very small data set and you don't want to do a whole lot, you can use Express. 10 gig limit, yeah. Storage. Indeed. That's a very good point. So if you didn't hear, enterprise and standard are two different things, like we've said before. Standard is limited in comparison to enterprise. Again, it's got a lot more than the free version, Express, but if you download the developer edition, think like, these are so many cool things, yay! And then you get standard edition because, oh, we saved a bunch of money. Well, don't be let down because standard edition didn't have the cool things that you were playing with on dev edition, if that makes sense. That is a good, important thing to note. One thing that we also have done before, I'll save it for another time. So as you can see here, you can actually try SQL in the cloud using Azure, which is not AWS. It's a Microsoft cloud thing. And apparently you can try that free too, but I haven't tried this. And to be honest with you, I mean, there's multiple ways of creating a free sandbox, like we talked about before. Like you can use VirtualBox on your own machine where you don't really need to, you can just stay on your own laptop, which I do have that installed on this laptop. You can use Azure, you can use AWS. Right now I sort of like AWS because, you know, there's all those cool options and things like that. But like I said, I actually haven't used Azure, so. But there it is. You can see it's an option. So we're going to go down. This is what we're talking about, Express. So that's free. Free, yay, but very limited. This one? So this one is a 180-day free trial. We don't click on that one. I think that's an evaluation edition. I don't actually know what the difference is between that and dev. So we go just scroll down. We're just scrolling down the page to developers right there. So you just click download now. And then like we said, there's Express. So if you're doing enterprise stuff on Developer Edition, bad. Stop it. Because you can get in trouble. Have to pay lots of money. Don't use Developer Edition to do stuff that you should be paying for enterprise. Like don't do enterprise stuff on developer. For production. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry. Stupid Jimmy. I'm not very good with my words. See, you should all feel better about yourself and want to present after hearing me. Developer and enterprise do have the same features. And in fact, I think you could just buy a key, like do a bunch of work and be like, I like this. I created this whole thing using enterprise, and maybe you don't use these little free things, but let's say you built a bigger built a bigger AWS cluster, and you did all this good work on it. You have all this data on there, and you're like, I really like how this is working out, and we're just testing stuff out because we were using Excel before, and this is awesome, and we want to purchase. You just buy Standard Edition or, well, actually, I think for Standard Edition you have to uninstall, right? Oh, you don't?
You can upgrade both standard and enterprise, no problem. Though I would say if you do have to worry about features for enterprise, rather than
Yeah, so if you like anyway, if you like your stuff and you're doing developer non-production work and you decide, I want to make this production, then you can just buy a key and then you put the key in and then, hey, now whenever you get audited, they won't get really mad at you for using Microsoft and not paying any money. So we're going to click download now. It's downloading, and then we get the developer edition. We're going to download media. You can use either the ISO or cab. Either one works. I think I did the cab. But Windows will auto mount the ISO. In other words, like I said, it doesn't matter. So you download one or the other. Now, you could do this on your virtual machine, right? So we're installing SQL Server onto the virtual machine. So you can download it from the virtual machine and it just goes and it lives up there. But whenever your machine goes away, then your copy of Developer Edition goes away. It's not that big of a deal, but like if you want to hold on to Developer Edition on your own box and take it around with you, then it might make more sense to put it on your own computer first instead of putting it up in the cloud where it's just going to go away. I don't know if it really matters all that much, but so then you download it and exit, and then yay, now we get to installing. So now we have what we need. We have everything but the database. We have SQL Server and we have a server to put SQL Server on, that's what we need. So we're going to connect using remote desktop connection. This is what we were showing earlier. One cool thing that you can do though, and this sort of goes along with what I was saying about you can download SQL Server onto your machine or the virtual machine, either way, one or the other. If you do it on your own machine, then one thing you can do is you can go here to remote desktop connection. So this is how we're going to get to the virtual machine. We're going to go click more down here under local resources, and then we're going to click drive. So this just basically means like whenever I connect to the virtual machine, then stuff I have on my own hard drive, like I can pull to and from wherever I'm connecting to. So if that doesn't make sense, it just means like the little file explorer is going to have stuff, whatever you downloaded on your own machine. So right now, this is the virtual machine. I know that for a lot of us, whenever I first started, I didn't know what a virtual machine was or how it worked. So that's why if I'm over-explaining it a little bit, I apologize. So right now, you can see up here, we're remoted into this machine. So this is a computer inside a computer. It's like computer inception. It's really nice. So what we're going to do, first thing we're going to do, and we're going to talk about why we're doing this later. So just trust me right now. First thing we're going to do, because we're pretending like we're going to take this somewhat seriously, this installation. Because like, why are we installing SQL Server? Well, because we're trying to learn something and how to do it the right way. So we're building good habits. Then I can say, oh, I installed SQL Server and you did it somewhat correctly. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Computer Management. I got to that by right-clicking the little Start button down here, going to Computer Management. There's a few ways you could get there, but that's one way. And then going to Disk Management. That's the first thing we're doing. Now, you may notice here that we have a 30 gigabyte hard drive that is attached to this server. Okay? So what we're doing is we're partitioning this drive up into multiple pieces. Like I said, we'll explain that later, okay? But first thing we're going to do is you're going to shrink the volume. So we're going to make some room to make other partitions on the hard drive. So we're just going to do 2 gigs worth. And we probably, when I say we, I mean me, What I probably should have done is made a few more, but that's okay. We're just going to go, we're just going to go with this. So I made 2 gigs out of 30, so the free edition of this has 30 gigs free. We're creating a new volume out of that 2 gigs right here. This is what we shrunk, so this is just unallocated space on the hard drive. We're going to make a new volume out of that. And this is just how you do it. So this is like 1.5 GB-ish. And then we're going to give it a drive letter, and we're going to make it NTFS and 64K allocation. That just means make it work decently well with SQL Server. That's why we choose 64K and NTFS. That's all that really matters from my perspective. So then we're going to click Finish, and then we're going to do the same thing with this other remaining 513 meg, so about half gig. So we're going to have 3 drive letters. We have the hard drive partitioned in 3 pieces. Remember that for later. I'm going to count on each and every one of you to remember that. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our installation of SQL Server installer. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Because we haven't installed it yet, so we're not going to our installation. We're going to the installer. So this is what we copied over. We're just going to click the this middle guy here, this application, and we're going to open it. It's going to spill its guts out, and then it's going to start running. Probably had to click a setup that I might have forgotten to screenshot. But either way, you want to click on that, and then you see the little folder created down here, and then that'll take you to the installation center. Okay? So now we're starting to install SQL Server. Hooray! So what we're going to do is we're going to click on installation here. And when I said this is like a click-by-click how to install, that's what we're doing. So we're doing click-by-click. So click installation, and we're going to go to this top one here, new SQL Server standalone installation, or add features to an existing installation. So that's going to take us here to the product key. Now this is where we were talking about earlier. Oh, I have developer edition already, but I want to do production stuff on it. What do I do? If you bought a key, you'd enter it in here. Or you click developer here. You could choose a few different things. I think they have evaluation edition, which is like I said before, it's like developer edition, but like more lame, I think. It like sends your stuff, or it's 180 days or something. I have no idea. Yeah, so we'd have to look it up. There's got to be something. It couldn't be exactly the same thing, but 180 days, but I don't know. I didn't Google it. I'm sorry. So we're just going to click along here, accept the license. We don't want to send Microsoft updates just because it's like, just don't do that. We're going to click next. Don't worry about this little guy here that's warning. As long as it's not red, we're fine. We're going to click on. So we don't have a whole lot of space on this. Like we talked about before, we only have 30 gigs, and like 15 of it is taken up by Windows and other things. So we're only going to use the database engine services here. Now, I don't know if I actually included, no I didn't. You can scroll down there, and there's like a bunch of different options for things. This is what we were talking about earlier with the SSIS and all that good stuff. See, there's analysis services right there. SQL Server replication. I think, and this is something that Bill and I were sort of talking about, we don't know for sure. There might be a limit to the amount of instances you can run as far as virtual servers. I'm sure there is. No. Huh? No. I'm talking about AWS. Right. Yeah, we don't know how many you can have for free. They're pretty sneaky about that, actually. They're like, at some point we might charge you. I don't know when. But what I would like to do in the future, and I might do this as long as it's free, select SQL Server replication, and then you can get 2 clusters to replicate data back and forth. So if you were like, boy, I really want to practice doing that, you could try it here. And this is what you have to select, SQL Server replication. But that's for another day. What? No, replication is like real time. Well, you have data on one server that gets replicated to the other server live. So if you're using transactions and a new transaction goes into your primary server, it takes that and it copies it over to the other server. And then you have it in both places. Then if this server A goes down, you can set it to automatically fail over to the next one. And then if you have your networking all set up correctly, then life goes on despite the one dying.
Well, a backup technically is data store offline is something you can.
Yeah, backup is offline.
A replication has the side problem of, well, yes, you do come up automatically, so it's failover or secondary, but as a backup, if you change data on server A, it also changes on server B, so you can't restore and recover what you changed.
Yeah. So that's a good question, though. So I'm just going to cover it again just because I have the microphone. What's the difference between replication and a backup? Well, a backup is like a snapshot of the data in that instant that you took the backup, right? So I took a backup at 10 a.m. this morning. If I have a bunch of new data that goes into the database that I took the backup of, and then that goes on, and then right now I restore the database, it's only going to have the data from up until 10 o'clock this morning. It's going to be exactly how the database was when I took the backup. Conversely, if I have replication, the secondary server is going to have the same data as the primary server. We could sort of dive in, I guess, a little bit more on the differences. You can have synchronous or asynchronous replication, meaning if one server died in the middle of new data getting put in, will it be on both servers or only on one? And that just sort of depends on your settings. But the replication is always keeping up, whereas the backups are whenever you took the backups. So I hope that makes sense. Good question, though. So we're going to go and just hit next, and it's going to be, we're going to do a default instance, not a named instance. Can anyone tell me why we might use a named instance? Besides you, that was Bill, sorry. Julie. Correct. So what Julie said was multiple instances on the same server. That's whenever you would use a named instance. But since we only have one on this server, we're only going to use the default instance. Okay? All right, so this is a little side part here because I remembered, like, once we got to this point. For security reasons, we don't want to use these NT service accounts. So I suppose we have a few minutes we could talk about the accounts. Well, first off, just because I'm looking at it, does anybody know what the SQL Server browser is for, besides Bill? Julie, you know that one? Aha, I stumped her. She only knew the one. Okay, that's good. By the way, have you been checking Twitch to see if there's anybody ridiculing me or asking questions?
Not about you.
Oh, good. Yeah. Bring it on. Well, the browser has to do with named instances. That's a hint or a statement. Okay, still no? Bill? All right, go ahead. Tell the class.
The browser allows the named instance to actually be searchable, so you can see it whenever you're looking for the instance itself. It's the default instance. 1433 on the server automatically goes to the default instance, but it can't see the named instance. So with the browser on, it's able to actually view the named instance.
In other words, with the browser turned off, you can't use your named instances. With it turned on, you can use them. Seems a little weird, but that's how it is. Then we also have the agent and the engine itself. As you can see, they're all set to 3 different startup types, which you can change around. But you want startup to be automatic for your database most of the time, I would think. No? What do you have a?
You do want your
You debate?
Automatic or anything that's like a cloud service, because that doesn't matter. But if you're gonna run it on your local machine, make sure it's set that to manual, or you'll wonder why your computer's running really poorly for no reason.
Okay, so what Bill just said was, if you have this on your own, like, so this is a Sandbox instance, right? So if you had this on your own machine, like this isn't, but if you were, this isn't, but if you were to have this running on your own machine and you weren't using it, it's burning up resources on your computer. So in that case, you might want to have this turned off automatically. Otherwise, it's like, oh, I turned off SQL Server because it just chews through my battery and resources. And then you reboot your machine and then you have it set to automatic. When you turn it back on, the engine will just run in the background on your own laptop or wherever you're running it. This is in the cloud, so it doesn't really matter. And for production and things, you probably want your server up after you reboot it. So yeah. So what we want to do is we want to avoid using these default accounts. And so we're just going to create a few accounts. So I guess this is like SA stuff, huh? SA stuff, woo! So what we're going to do is go back to computer management, which we talked about before. That's whenever you right-click on the little start button down here and go to computer management, and then we're going to go to users and groups. By the way, I do plan on providing these slides to anybody who might want them. So if you're like, too many slides, death by PowerPoint, then, well, at least you can go back and look at them if you want. If you want. If you don't want them, then that's fine with me too, whatever. Just keep them to myself, it's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to name our users, and I'm going to name whatever I want because I'm the guy creating all this stuff. I'm God. So Mr. Agent Man is what I'm naming the agent user account, and SQL Boss Man Awesomeness with one S because I didn't have room for another S. One thing to note, we're going to make it so the user cannot change the password and the password never expires. Because if the password expires, then you try to log into or your database. So again, the database engine, you know, you have a user that's in charge of it, let's say, and if that password expires and it doesn't work anymore, then I'm pretty sure that you'll be having a rough day until you figure out what's going on. Why is everything off?
The worst part is it continues to work until the service reboots.
Oh, really? Oh, whenever it tries to, because that's when it tries to log back in?
So if you reset the password, it'll fail at a different time.
Okay. What he just said was, if you didn't set your password, it never expires, and then it expires. This one, SQL Bossman Awesomeness, expires. Your services will keep running, because remember, this is running your SQL server. Your instance, your installation, it's running it. So as the password expires, it's like business as usual. Your data will still work just fine. And so we're pretending like this is more or less how we would want to do it in real life. Like this is a sandbox, I know, but we're practicing good habits. So if this was in real life, then your SQL, if this account password expired and you rebooted the services, so either if you rebooted the server or you can bounce the services themselves, and it tried to log back in and it had a expired password, SQL Bossman Awesomeness. Here, let's just move forward so we can, well, you can't really see. Well, SQL Bossman Awesomeness is right here. And you tried to, boy, I lost my train of thought. Where am I? Sorry? Well, here's the thing. It might send it, where's the alert going to go to? Like maybe you have a repository of like any account that expires gets sent to an email or goes to the administrator or whatever, but if you don't have that set up properly, then it'll just expire. And I mean, like, imagine if you had like a huge company with like hundreds of users or something like that, you know, and nobody's like logging in. So maybe I have a user account, right? And then whenever I go to log in, it's like, hey, your password expired. Configure a new password. It's like, oh, okay. So then I enter a new password and we move on. But for this one, it's like if this password, if we didn't set it to where it wouldn't expire, and then we rebooted the services, whether that's rebooting the server or bouncing them, it would just like wouldn't work because it'd be like, hey, somebody's got to run this thing, and you're failing, so no. So that's why just the really, really long way of saying just click this box. Sure, yeah, there would be a log for sure. Yeah, that's like sort of like if you were troubleshooting it, like why isn't it coming up? You'd go to the logs would be probably the first place you'd want to go. And then that might be a fun thing. We should do that sometime, like have a little, hey, here's a quiz question, what's going on? But then you go to the logs and, oh, sorry, Julie. Did you have your hand up for a while? You're sort of, oh, sorry, Julie.
Another warning, if you think that you're going to change username after the install and then when the user is not added on the box, nearly impossible.
So administrative privileges is your warning?
If you have an account going that does not have an install privilege, put it in before you install. Otherwise, it's easier to uninstall and reinstall than it is to change.
Yes. Bill looks skeptical.
I have experience with this.
It's true. It's definitely not untrue. But the biggest places where you have a problem is where you're trying to set permissions to drive locations, trying to set permissions to file permissions, drive locations on the actual drive structure, or the NDF and EDF notebooks themselves. If you grant that,
That's a great point, and we didn't talk about it.
It's possible, but it's not well documented, and it's a trial and error.
So, okay, well, let's just give an example of something that could happen. Okay, we're giving these users, and this is another, like, the reason why we're doing this, again, is for security reasons, right? So, like, SQL Server, you're going to have SQL Server, you're going to want it to do things. You're going to want it to back up your databases and things like that. Whenever that happens, it's like SQL Server's got to go to maybe some storage, and it needs permissions to go to that place. So if you don't give the user the appropriate privileges to do these certain things, you'll be like, hey, SQL Server, back up this database to this place, and your account that you did, SQL Bossman Awesomeness, if it doesn't have any permissions to anything and you try to back something up, then it's like wherever you're trying to back up to your storage or whatever, it's going to be like, whoa, I don't know you. Sorry, like no can do. So that's why it's important. And also, one of the reasons why we're doing this, we put these users into a group, and we're just calling it SQL stuff. As you can see, we added Mr. Agent Man and SQL Bossman Awesomeness. And then we can give the group permissions, and then we don't have to give permissions to each individual account. That's just a little, like, you want to do that as much as possible. You really don't want to give permissions to individual users if you can ever help it, really. But, so anyway, I hope that made sense. That was a really good point, because surely it's like, oh, I've tried to back this up and it's not allowing me to back up. Why is that? Well, you didn't give the right permissions to the account. So, as you can see, I got a little X because I tried to hit next without entering in the password, so just ignore the X. It won't be there for you if you type in the passwords. Okay, so we're going to continue on. We're going to use Windows Authentication mode. That just means, like, so I'm using the administrator account for this virtual machine. So what that means is whenever I logged in, instead of like me putting in I have no created user account for me, it's just administrator. And what I want administrator to have the keys to the kingdom on the box. And then we'll only use it when we really need to. So that's using Windows Authentication. So we can use mixed mode where we use SQL Server authentication. I'm trying to decide if I could properly describe what's going on here. I mean, I understand it, but your logins are, it stores your login credentials on SQL Server if you use SQL Server authentication. So you can have a login for, let's say, Ewald. So we could have a login that information is stored on SQL Server. Conversely, well, if you think about, before I move on from that actually, whenever I use the SQL Server one, I use Ewald, it gets me into SQL Server. That's, remember, if we use mixed mode, SQL Server authentication. We're talking about this first one, SQL Server authentication. That login is for the SQL Server box. Whenever I want to log in, I can use that to get onto that box. But if I was trying to log on to this server or this environment to log on to Windows itself, not SQL Server, to actually get into this box, I need to have a Windows account associated to the machine. Okay? So I know that would be extremely confusing if it was me 4 years ago, but I think that's about as good as I can do. Like, if I was to log on just into this machine using a Ewald user account, that would be Windows authentication. If I was on this box and then I used a separate login to get into SQL, God, see, it gets sort of confusing. All right, anyway, now that I've successfully messed everyone up, Bill's going to try to do a better job.
So the SQL Server authentication is only for SQL Server and doesn't log in anywhere else, has no permissions to any of the drives or any other servers or rights to the domain or environment. It only logs into SQL and is stored in the security section.
Yeah, so SQL Server authentication is only for SQL Server. Windows is for everything.
Windows authentication still does not have to grant permissions to log in the server or any of the drives or anywhere else, but it is housed on either the domain or local system as a Windows login and is maintained by Windows instead, and SQL Server passes through the authentication to make sure it's allowed.
Yeah.
So it's a way to grant additional controls by using Windows authentication to say something like the account expires in 90 days, which you can't do in SQL.
Okay, so all right, here's a good question. Maybe this will help. If I was going to, so right now all we have is the administrator account, and we have Mr. Agent Man and SQL Boss Man Awesomeness. Now I'm creating a user account for one of my employees, Bill, because he works for me like a slave. So I'm going to create him a user account because it's like, all right, I want Bill to be able to log on to this machine. Okay? And so I go to this user file here. Remember, we're in computer management. This is on Windows. It's a hint. And we go to users, and I create, instead of SQL Bossman Awesomeness, it's Bill Barnes. Is that Windows authentication or SQL Server authentication? Who thinks Windows? You have to raise your hand or you have to leave. Okay, who thinks SQL? All right, some of you abstain. You have to leave. I'm just kidding. Twitch people, I hope you raise your hands too. Everyone's right, it's Windows. So, yeah. Moving on. We're just doing Windows authentication mode. I'm trying to kill time here, Bill. All right, so moving on. As you can see, we're on server configuration. Now we're going to data directories. Ha! This is what we were talking about earlier whenever we shrunk the drive and we created 2 more partitions. Ha ha ha! I told you to remember. Hopefully you did. What we're doing here, as you can see, is we're choosing directories for our data. Okay? So we have our C drive. Our C drive is where Windows is and where SQL Server is installed and anything else that we have installed, that's on our C drive. Now we have our D drive, and as you can see, we're using it as our default database directory. We're using the E drive as the database log directory, and backup, well, we'll just ignore backup for now, but it's also going to E. So, can anyone tell me why we went through the trouble of making a separate partition, a D drive, and then we point our database, we move our database directory to there? Can anyone tell me, besides Bill? All right, Julie. Wow, Julie's on fire. If I had candy or something, I'd give it to you. You got Chick-fil-A, so that's pretty good. Free chips. She's totally correct. If you didn't hear her, so like we said before, Windows and SQL are installed on the C drive. Oh, he's giving me like a excellent. If you have your data on the C drive and you have a bunch of excellent, and the database starts to expand, so you have a bunch of new data, your database gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then finally, the C drive gets full of data, completely packed. What do you think happens to the server? Can anyone? Yeah, it's not good. It's not pretty. So that's what we were talking about. That's what Julie said, in case you didn't hear. But that's why we put it on the D drive. So if the D drive fills up, your whole server doesn't die. Great news. Unless you like your server dying, then you're in for a bad day. Now, your database still does go down. Oh, are you talking about if you put it on the D drive? Well, I'm getting there, Bill. You want to get up here? This guy. What he was saying is, well, if your D drive fills up, well, your database, it goes down, which is kind of a problem because, as you can see here, this is where master lives, which is like the brain, I guess, for your SQL server. So it's probably a good reason for not putting it's sort of some debate as to where to put your data root directory, this here. I think in the past, I've normally put it on C. Here we put it on D. Like I said, this is where master in your system databases go. And if you can't access those, that means you can't get in login information or anything like that. You can't get into your database, you can't get into SQL Server. So if you had one file, let's say you had a bunch of new data you weren't expecting or you weren't paying attention, it filled up your D drive, now you can't even get into SQL Server. So, yeah. I mean, the reason why you also don't want to put, okay, the argument for not putting your system databases on C is because actually you can write data to your system databases. It's possible. It's not advised. But you could, in theory, write a bunch of data to master on accident. And if you did that, not only would you kill SQL Server, you'd kill everything because, like we said, C drive, you don't want to fill it up. So we decided here we'll put it on the D drive. All you really need to know is this needs to go to a separate drive, and then your log files need to go to a separate drive. Since we're here, we can also talk about your logs as well. That's sort of that's where your transactions get stored. It's in the log file. So a transaction tell me if this is a good way of describing transaction. It's any change to the data. So if I had a database and I made a change to it, like an update. So I took a cell and I changed the cell. It would write that change to the log file. Okay? Not just data changes? Sure. Wait. Yeah.
It's not changing the data itself, it's changing the metadata.
Right, changes to the data or metadata. It's important to include that. Yeah. Agreed. So metadata or data.
Can you select in SQL Services?
Yeah.
When you go in your log file, like I want everything, I want a little bit, they can give you.
Can you select? Is that?
No, can you select what goes into the log file? Like I only
Whoa, that's a good.
want to know just that these changes, the big changes.
I don't know. That's a good question. The question is can you decide what gets written to the log file?
So if you're changing to full recovery, you can change it, records every change, every update, and it keeps it there.
That's different.
But then it records all those changes, it keeps it there until you finish whatever you're doing, and you actually get a backup or check it. So if it says that we're done with this, we can write off and it goes from it out. If not, simple as automatically. You can also do a C2 audit, which can increase a lot of what you've actually audited for.
Okay, what Bill's talking about, so just to restate the question, your log file records data and metadata changes. The question is can you decide what changes it records? Now, Bill's talking about changing into different recovery. Well, okay. Okay, so the answer is no. You either record everything or nothing, basically. Okay, for the oh yeah, it always records everything. I guess simple.
Simple truncates media. Truncate, or simple records everything, and truncates out of commit, and full recovery records everything, truncates out of commit.
All right, maybe we're going a little too deep on this, but so yeah, what the log file does, I guess. I thought about this too. If I should, see, there's a lot that goes into it. It's a good question. Whenever you're making the changes, it's also writing those changes, sometimes called deltas, to the log file, right? So if you made a lot of changes all at the same time, it would write all of those changes to the log file, and then now here's where there's different ways of different recovery models. Is that the right way? Is it recovery models? It's been a while. It's off the top of my head. Full, bulk, or simple. Those are the three. So if you can set your database to simple recovery, that means that after it writes everything to your log file, it just truncates. It gets rid of it. It's like, okay, I'm not going to remember any of that. But if you use different models, you can tell it how it'll, depending on what you choose, it'll hold on to that until it allows you to get rid of it. Sometimes that means both replicated and backed up. Sometimes it means just backed up. But so let's say you made a ton of inserts, right? Like a bulk insert. If you had it in full recovery model, it would write all those that would fill up your transaction log. All of those inserts would go into your log file. Those would stay there in full until you backed up the log file. So it remembers all what you did. If it's in simple, it just gets rid of it. But it still needs the log file space to be able to make those transactions. It's a little complicated, and I don't do a very good job explaining. Sorry.
I just know that they can get big.
They can.
Problems if you don't clean them out, and also if you're trying to write to a log file, you don't have any room, things to stop.
That's exactly right. And that's why we want it in its own directory, because we'd rather the transaction fail than everything fail. Does that make sense? So So for whenever you put stuff in simple recovery mode, databases in simple recovery mode, what you're saying is I know that this log file could blow up if I did something like a huge number of inserts or something like that. But because it's in simple recovery mode, it's not going to keep ever increasing until I back it up. Again, it's sort of a separate side conversation. We'll move on just, but it can blow out. It 100% can blow out. And that's why we put it in its own file, because it's the same thing as this. You don't want to kill your databases. You just want to kill your transactions. You don't want to kill everything at once. That's why we separate everything. TempDB, we should be putting on its own thing. That's why I said earlier we should make more partitions for the same reason. But we'll just put it on D&E just because. I guess real quick we'll talk about backups. Can anybody think of a reason why you wouldn't want to put your backups where you store your data? That's correct. So if you have your backups where your data is and then that goes away for some reason, whether it gets corrupted or something, you lose everything, which that's one of the main reasons to have backups, is so that if something happens to your data, you have spares. So put them in some other place. I didn't have really I put it on the E. It's really better if we put it somewhere else, but it's going on E for, again, it's a sandbox. But just keep in mind, like, you want your backups not where your data is.
You really don't want your backups to run out of space.
Yeah.
Because then the backup fails, the rest of your
Yeah. If your backups fail, then you can't take backups. Your log file doesn't or continues to grow, because like we talked about, if you have full recovery model, you have to take backups for the log file to truncate. So your logs will keep growing, and then if you keep them on the same place, well, it's just bad. Anyway. So that's the end of the installation. Super simple, right? Wow, it was so easy. The configuration file path right here, this is sometimes good to know, because basically the way that we decided to do this, all the settings that we set and all that stuff, that gets remembered in the config file. So if we were going to let's say that we were like, okay, we want to do 3 of these exact same installations the exact same way. Just take this and you can run this config file and run it on a different server, and it'll configure it the exact same way as you did this one. So you don't have to click all those buttons or do all those things. You just run the config file. And then it works. Woo! And we move on. So you got to download SSMS. This will just go through pretty quickly. SSMS used to come with the installation as like an option in here. SSMS is how you access the data, I guess is the best way to say it. So the data is on the SQL server, and then you use this to get to the data. So you download it, move it over. So
This is so you can view.
it's an IDE. So it's like Visual Studio. It's actually mostly Visual Studio, I think. Pretty sure. So but yeah, it's, yeah. So we have to have the management studio though, if we want the GUIs and all that good stuff. So we're just going to install it. All you literally have to do is click install. So that's why I'm going a little bit fast through there. And then we scroll down to Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. That's what I'm clicking on right here. And then this is SSMS 2017. You download this completely free. Of course, it's sort of weird that you have to download it separate. I was not expecting that. I didn't know you had to do that until I was doing this. So we're going to use period right here. That means like local. That's what that means. Right. So this is the default instance. It's not a named instance. So we're just doing the local server. So if we were doing a named instance, we would do dot slash whatever the named instance is. That means whatever named instance you installed. An instance just means installation. So whatever your the name of that installation is on that server. So, but in this case, it's not named, so all we have to do is the period. That just means local. We're using Windows authentication, like we talked about before. So the user that we're logged in as. Hooray! So we'd finished that, and we can see it's working. So now, real quick, checking to make sure no one's asleep. Haha, I've been loud enough. We're going to download an AdventureWorks database just because it's pretty typical, like, play around with database. So this is where you go. They have it on GitHub, actually. And then I just selected AdventureWorks 2017. It's totally free. And then we're saving it. And we're going to move it on over. So this is what I was talking about earlier, why we made that selection. This is so we can get this, this backup, this .back. That's how we know it's a back file. You can actually name it whatever you want. That's sort of a side confusing statement that I didn't need to say. But the back file is just a backup, and we're going to move it to the server. So I put it on the E. So we went from local to, so this is my laptop that's sitting in Oklahoma City. And then we're going to, remember, this is the virtual server, the E drive that we created on that virtual server, and that's where I dropped this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go down. So here's the SQL server that we just installed. We're right-clicking on databases, restore database. Now we're clicking device because we need to go to where the database is. We're clicking these little dots over here. We're just going to do everything through GUI. We don't, just because it's easier and easier to show. A backup from that somebody else backed up. Yep. So then we're going to go to add, and we're going to locate where I put this. So you remember I put this in E, just at the root of E. There it is, right there. Ta-da! And it'll show up here. It's looking for .back, so there it is. Hit OK. There it is. So we could actually name it whatever we want. Let's say that we already had an AdventureWorks database restored on the server. We could do another one and just rename it here to AdventureWorks 2017 test or whatever. So it looks a little weird. Whoops, that should. We're clicking on files, so we went from general to files. What I did was I clicked reallocate all files to folder. So they were going to the root of D, and then instead now they're going to a folder called AdventureWorks 2017. I'm just sorting where the data files live. So as you can see, this is where they're being restored as they're going to, the main data file is going to AdventureWorks 2017 on D, that folder, and then there it is. And there's the log file on E under a folder. The options, we're not going to mess with those. We could talk about those at a later time. And then I just go ahead and click the script button here because I like it more. And it'll actually just, this is what we could have done if we just wanted to type in all the code. But that's way less fun than going through the GUI. So instead we went through the GUI. Here we are. It just puts it all out there. Hooray! And then we hit execute, and it finishes. So we successfully restored AdventureWorks 2017. Yay! We did it. And there it is. Yay, proof. So now I expanded it, and I decided that we're going to run a test query because that was one of our goals. So we're using the AdventureWorks database. If you've never done that before, that's what that is. And then we're just going to take the top 100 of everything just to prove that it worked. And there's your proof. There's some sample data. And now you're an expert. So make sure you tell all future employers, I am a SQL Server expert. Don't do that, but yeah.
The database that you restore and did a test query and stuff there. Where did
Yep.
it come from originally?
GitHub. Well, I just Googled it. It's just AdventureWorks 2017, but I'll go back. Yeah, it's a Microsoft. It's a link through Microsoft, but yeah.
So I don't have to make my own. I can
Nah.
grab that.
Yep. And check it out. There's a bunch of different options there too. See these data warehouses too down here? And yeah, and there's a lot of different, if you want to just look up test databases, Stack Overflow, I think, has a good one that is used a lot. And I mean, if you just Google it, stick away from probably the sketchier parts of the internet whenever you're downloading random stuff. But there's a lot of databases out there available. I just choose AdventureWorks because it's like sort of one of the more popular ones, and it's through Microsoft. So, but yeah, you just click it here and download it, and you got it. It's pretty cool. Does anybody have any questions other than will you please shut up? Bill, I said, don't ask that. Question? Mm-hmm. I didn't really, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I may need to. Yes. Windows, yes, correct. You want to use Linux or something like that? Yeah, it's totally an option. I don't know if you were you here at the very beginning of the presentation? Yeah, so you can choose Linux. I mean, they have Linux boxes already in AWS that you could just choose. I've never installed a SQL Server on Linux. But if I wanted to try, and I do, then what I can do is I can just spin up one of those Linux servers, one of the free tier ones, and then I can play around with it and do whatever I want. And if I don't like it, I can just kill it and start a new one. Yeah, and it's totally free, so it doesn't hurt, really. And you don't have to go through the installation of Linux or anything like that. It's already there. You just pick it, So we could actually, it's going to take, oh, jeez. Well, this will take me back to the beginning. Yeah, this will take me back. So launch virtual machine, and then here you just pick one of these. So like maybe so the one I picked was this one. Instead of picking that one, you just pick, I'm not sure what the right one to be. I haven't done enough research, but maybe this one here. Or Red Hat. Yeah, Red Hat. I mean, it's something I'm totally interested in because I think it'd be really cool to play around. That's one of the great things about this. You can, a lot of stuff, these OSs you can download and then you can try on your own virtual machine, like VirtualBox or something like that. We talked about it a little bit before. But what's nice here is that you don't have to do the OS install. And all you have to do is have a connection to the internet. And you can beef these things up. We see here that it's only the one CPU and 1 gig of memory, not very much. It ran really fine for me whenever I was doing it, but I was doing, a few meg database that I'm working with, not very big. But, you'd have to do your own research into the pricing of these things. But what Bill said before is like a lot of these smaller tier ones, like it really, they won't cost you a whole lot, especially if you're just doing Sandbox stuff. If you're smart and you just spin it up and then you use it for a few hours and then you spin it back down and you don't leave it running all the time, then you can get actually like a lot more storage and a lot more power, and it's really not that bad. Good question. Any other questions? Okay, Bill?
Not a question, but a comment. If your company has
I said questions.
MSDN accounts, then they normally get Azure hours and credits as well for free. So you can use those in place of AWS and build their
Yeah.
Do you have that in your board? You guys have a test box? Yeah. I've got test boxes in Azure and AWS to test both platforms. I mean, we're a consulting company, so when someone comes and says, I want to put 400 boards in Azure, it's something that we've already gone through and tested and seen how they work and what we interact with. And testing new database, AI tools, Snowflake is AWS cloud only. So the only way to test that is to have S3 storage and have Snowflake in the cloud and we would actually send it out to it.
So what, for everyone who didn't hear, which is
Only people at home.
people at home and maybe other people in here.
More than 5 feet away from the planet.
Yeah, Bill was commenting that if you have an MSDN account, which is just a Microsoft,
It's an expensive Microsoft suite.
it's what?
It's a suite of Microsoft installs and builders. So we keep running the product installs.
Oh yeah, so if you have Enterprise installed or something, you have an MSDN account. If you have that, then they'll let you use their Azure stuff for cheaper or free for testing. They give you credits, he says. So yeah, and we sort of talked about it a little bit too. I haven't clicked on this SQL Server in the cloud. This is Azure, again, not AWS, but it looks like they have a free tester thing there too. So again, like, I hope that this is useful for anybody who's like, boy, I really want to get into SQL Server, but I don't know what to do. Like, as you can see, there's a few different options for if you just want to play around. That's how I started out on this stuff.
Is there, like, for example, those books that I gave you there, that guy has his own database for this. Are there any books that you know, like, say we want to, to do this product on our own, is there any books that you know of that will use this and that we can follow?
For AWS specifically?
Or Azure?
So the question is are there any books that I know of that sort of expand on this at all? And probably, or at least there's got to be, I would guess, blogs and things like that, but I don't know. I can't point you anywhere specifically. Yes? Okay, yeah, let's do that. We only have 15 more minutes. So thank you all for bearing with me. I appreciate it. I hope if one person got one small thing out of that, I'll be very happy. So appreciate it. That's it. Okay, so we're going to talk about